Good evening. This is Edward and Ann, and this is sonsofgod.com, and this would be the 15th of July. We're going to do a last-minute podcast and just review some things. Now, we've been talking lately, and I know that these podcasts and this teaching is extremely outside the box. I mean, it gets that way for us. I can imagine to those of you that find this for the first time and listen to it, it probably it pushes you to the edge of your envelope pretty easily because these things really aren't being talked about that much in Christian circles. There's a lot of power of positive, thinking, and just, there's a lot of good things out there. The Father has many different ones with many different callings, and they're about doing what they're supposed to do. Just as each of you have a unique calling to do what it is the Lord has for you to do. Our calling happens to be really focused on breaking through the veil and obtaining the promise that is woven throughout the Word with respect to God's final intent with man and with the sons that He has sent into the earth at this time. So I know that a lot of what we say can be a little bit to digest. All I can do is ask, do your best, look to the Lord to have Him give understanding with what we're speaking of. So we're going to talk about breaking the veil tonight. And the veil, well, there's two aspects to the veil. We see the veil as an exterior entity, almost like a fence or a wall. And I've seen that in the Spirit. And to pass from one to another puts you into a whole different plane of reality, because it moves you into a deeper plane of the Father's kingdom, of the whole world of spirit. And not too many people really talk about the world of spirit. You talk about angels, talk about demons, deliverance, things like that. But not too many really get into the nuts and bolts of the world of the Father's kingdom, which is the world of spirit. And yet it's still very much here. It's all around us. And it's within us, like the Word says. The kingdom of God is within you. That's really hard to grasp. And what we're doing here tonight, I don't know how structured this word will be. I don't know if it's going to take 2 or 3 podcasts to talk about breaking the veil, which is really what the cloud of witnesses are waiting. They're waiting for the sons on this side, part of the visible church, to really break the veil and usher in the many changes God has ordained for this time. It's so easy to just read the Word, pick out the things that you don't have any problem with, and focus on those, and that's fine. But it's more interesting to read through the Word and go after the things that trouble you, that obviously are a great reach that no one's really talking too much about, and get on your face to really contend for those releases and those breakthroughs. And that's really what our walk with God is all about, both Ann and I, and those that God has raised up during this time. It is to, I think it's referenced in Hebrews, to carry the baton on this last leg of the race and see the breakthrough. We're not really interested in having a nice life and being, financially set and having all these keys about how to be a good person, how to achieve your goals, how to, be more creative or intuitive or whatever. The world, pursues after, so many of these things. That's not really our focus. That's not really what we're looking for, both in these podcasts and in our pursuit before God. We're looking for the best thing that God has. It's the good, the better, the best. We're looking for the best, and that is for sonship, for the reality of the full indwelling of God and the sonship that follows, which is as we've read before, the seal of your adoption to sonship. If you read Romans 8, the seal is the transformation of your body. And people don't want to go there, because that's a big one. That's a big one. But that is really what's happening right now. People can look and say, well, there's wars and there's all these problems on a natural plane. And there are. But the more you are removed from this world, like, Paul said, be not a part of this age. But, and he talks about the renewing of the mind. The whole thing is the sons of God have never been a part of this age. You can almost get back in the third person and look what's happening in the earth and realize the children of men, this is their world. This is what they're going through. This is not your world. This is not your city. This is not where you're called to dwell and live. But, to the majority out there, this is their world. And so, when you look at it from that perspective, you realize God's intent is to deliver his sons out of the world and to deliver the world out of them. Your mindset, your mentality, the way that you think, everything. It's more than just the power of positive thinking or getting some keys that can get you some things and whatnot. It is literally to deliver you from that which has become part of your consciousness during your sojourn here, that has made you put down roots, that has put anchors around your ankles, where you haven't been able to soar in the heavenlies because you've identified with this world as really what you're part and parcel of, and you're not. The sons of God are not a part of this which is passing away. And so, what we're kind of just talking here, you kind of just imagine we're sitting around the table. We're not doing a word. We're just talking amongst family about where we are right now, what do we have to do to break the tape, to finish the course? And so breaking through the veil, we're dealing with two elements, really. There is a veil that exists outside of us, and there's also a veil that exists within us. And we've talked about that a number of times. And it has to do, the word in Romans, Paul was saying, be ye renewed by the transformation of your mind. And so we're changed. And so we're in this time of an accelerated changing of our minds. And for me, it's not going quick enough. But it's probably going quicker than we understand. And it's changing how we see. You open your eyes and all of a sudden you see everything a little bit differently. And as each day goes on, everything begins to look different. And that's what begins to set apart the sons of God from the normal Christian or anyone else, is through the renewing of the mind and the instilling of the mind of Christ within the sons comes the ability to see reality from a different perspective. It begins to give you the ability to see where before you didn't see. So, let me read a few notes here for you. What's interesting is we don't seem to get away too much from the whole concept of frequency and vibration. But I think we need to understand it a little bit more because we're in this process of change. And with the change, we find that the vibration or the frequency that our physical body moves at and our soul, it's all changing. And it's coming up higher. And it's happening every day, except we are lagging behind in our ability to really perceive how much we've changed, because it's hard to measure it. But here again, every day you get up, you're not the same person that went to bed. You're changing. Every day you're changing. And that's why God has us to continue to break the bonds within ourselves, how we see ourselves. Because that's the only thing that holds up the whole process of what God is really doing. And, what continues to happen as you come up higher, as the work of the cross is being completed. And this is not new teaching, but we've talked about the body beginning to reflect the Spirit. And all of a sudden, you find that you begin to see, but not with the eyes, the agency of the eyes, but literally with your whole being. Your whole being begins to come alive to the presence of God, to the whole realm of the Father's kingdom. And as such, you begin to see with a whole new set of eyes, and hear with a whole new set of ears. And I think a lot of what we're trying to really get our hands on is how much we're changing, but we haven't been able to quite understand it or identify. And getting out of the way that we have operated as human beings. And that's harder. It's easier said than done. We're so used to seeing with our eyes, hearing with our ears, that it's very difficult to get out of that mode and begin to hear with your entire being, because the promises of God will save you to the uttermost, spirit, soul, and body. That as we come into these days, well, we've been in these days for quite some time of the parousia, the presence of God, but what's happening as we come up higher and we're changing is that our whole being is coming alive to the Lord, as the Lord more and more deeply indwells us, till literally your whole body is like a tuning fork. And we're so used to seeing a certain way, and I know this is maybe a hard concept to grab. We're so used to seeing with our eyes and our mind, because we tend to be mental creatures. We have to get out of the mind, and we have to get away from seeing with our eyes and let our entire body see. And I know that I'm talking about, I'm onto something here that's very important, because we have to get out of the habits that we've had. You know, we don't understand how much our present, physical experience is defined by the subconscious and defined by habits. They say that if you do something 21 days consecutively, that you create a habit. And whatever that is goes from the conscious mind down into the subconscious. So then you don't even have to think literally about it, because the subconscious takes over, because it's become a habit. So look at that on a larger scale. We've lived as human beings for a very long time. So we have a certain way that we see, and we think, and we hear, and we do, and we react to certain stimuli and respond. All of these have been over and over and over throughout our lifetime. So we have some very deeply ingrained habits. And it's not so easy to change. When God says, okay, I want you to look with the eyes of your spirit. Well, those are just words until you can experience that, which is literally experiencing a change of your whole paradigm and breaking the habits that you have allowed to define you. And so it's important to understand that God is bringing us into a world that is imperceptible to the senses, but yet your spiritual body can see it. And God is perfecting you, spirit, soul, and body. It's in Thessalonians, I believe. So, do you want to look that up, Anne? Spirit, soul, and body. I think it's in Thessalonians. So while she looks it up, let's talk about that for a second. Because this is more important than you realize. When God says, okay, I'm going to perfect you, He's not just talking about perfecting your spirit, and then you'll be ready to enter into resurrection life. He's talking about the whole man. Your spirit, your soul, your physical body, the triune being. That is what's going to enter into resurrection life. Not your spirit alone, but all that you are. And as we've been on this path of change and the work of the cross.
Thessalonians 5.
Okay, here, let me read that. As we've been on this path of change and the work of the cross, the soul has been decreasing, like Paul said. Forget what chapter it is. Anyway, he says, "I must decrease, that he might increase." And that's our cry. I mean, that's our common denominator. It's not. We're not in a fraternity here of anything else except those that have abandoned themselves to seek God and to become what God has called us to be. So what is happening? The soul is decreasing. The spirit is increasing. You're ceasing to be a soul person driven by the soul, and you're becoming a spiritual person driven by your spirit. As that becomes more and more a reality, the physical body will begin to reflect the spirit, not the soul. And we've taught this many times in the books. You're becoming a spiritual person. So, in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 23, this would be the King James, says, "And the very God of peace sanctify you wholly. And I pray, God, your whole spirit, soul, and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of the Lord." That's King James.
New American.
Yeah, New American Standard is more of a literal translation. But the bottom line.
And here's, he must increase and I must decrease.
Well, that's John 3:30. 30. He must decrease. He must increase. I must decrease. Yes. Here you go, hon.
After a while, they're all together.
So what's happening here? There's something of a mystery, and this is far more important than I can tell you. And that is, in your meditative times, stop and just listen, because to what he is saying, there is something happening where the triune being, you as a triune being, is being completed right now, being preserved blameless unto the coming of the Lord, unto the presence of the Lord, unto the day of the parousia. Well, I've got to tell you, we are so deep into the days of the parousia, so deep into the coming of the Lord, that this reality is already a deep part of our consciousness and our reality, even though you may not be aware of it. But that's the challenge. But if I would, just to or look in the mirror and say, you know what? I once was a soul-driven person, but now I am a spirit-driven person, and my spirit is merging with my soul, merging with my physical body. And my physical body is beginning to reflect my spirit. And the deeper it goes into the reflecting of that, the deeper resurrection life begins to manifest. And we've talked about the signs of the Spirit in the first book. the manifestation of the sons of God, one of the latter chapters talks about the body coming alive and how you get signs in your hands, in your feet, legs, whatever, because the body is coming alive to God, coming alive to the kingdom. First stages of resurrection life. As you see that happening, you realize, I've got the promise, I've got the token. It's already happening. I'm coming alive. My body is changing. I'm getting signs. There's a change happening. And I'm here to say that we're a lot further along in the change than we've understood. And God help us to understand what He has already created us to be. We are a spiritual being. We are sons. We're not the soul that is passing away, that is minimizing each day, but we're the Spirit. And how does the word go? God earnestly desires the Spirit that He has put within each of us. God earnestly desires that communion and oneness, connection. But it's happening. It's happening. We are a spiritual being. And the merging of our spirit, soul, and body is something that needs to really be revealed individually, because it's a lot more significant than we've understood. It's more than just, seeing a little bit more. And here again, tracking back to what we were saying, it's our whole being that is coming alive to God. And it is our whole being that it's beginning to see. And you might say, well, I don't understand. And I don't know that I can explain it. But every aspect of your being, every aspect of your body, every aspect of you is beginning to see and beginning to hear. You're not limited to the eyes. If anything, the eyes limit, or the ears. But it's a whole different set of faculties coming alive as the Spirit is moving in ascendancy over your soul and your physical body. That's what it means to come alive. That's what it means to really be born again, if you want to talk about that. So, where we were headed when this word first began had to do with the breaking of the veil. But all of this ties together because the veil that's within us only remains because we still believe that it has validity. And it doesn't. But it's a hard one to get out because, like we said, we've been creatures of habit. And the habits have defined us. And God has been working overtime to get us to break our bonds with ourselves, to break our concepts, to just let go of everything. Wasn't that the word? Let go. Just let go. Because I can't fill a cup that's already full. Let go of all of that stuff. Then you'll be able to see as you've never seen, hear as you've never heard, because you're not going to say, well, okay, this is how it has to be processed. This is how it works. No, it's not. You don't see with your eyes. You don't hear with your ears. Not the things of spirit, not the kingdom. It doesn't come that way. And so this is probably step one. How do you break the veil within yourself or externally, without which you first cross this threshold? more than we understand, our spirits are already sojourning through the veil. We already have access through the veil. But that's only on a spirit plane. And what we need to understand is it's meant for the whole man, spirit, soul, and body. And a whole different level of consciousness than we've known. We can't limit ourselves thinking, okay, well, we haven't got it yet because we haven't been able to touch and feel it. We have it. We're still a bit locked into our concepts and our habits. And that's where we have to get rid of it. We have to get rid of the habits. Get rid of thinking that we're going to see with the eyes of our physical and the ears of our physical. We're an entirely new creation, and that is yet to really manifest. When God says, behold, I will do something new, and it's a whole new creation, we yet have really understood what that is. But I know it's certainly not what we've been. And it involves the triune being, our spirit, soul, and body, being preserved blameless and entering into sonship and having every faculty come alive to God. That's what I'm looking for. And we have it. We have it. And we're closer to realizing it than we know. But we have it. Where every faculty of what you are is alive to God. You don't have a choice of, am I aware, am I not? As God merges the triune being with the indwelling of the Spirit, you are. You are. And the whole realm of spirit cannot be held in abeyance any longer. Then we're ready to start pressing through the veil. Only it'll be a little bit different. We've had times where we've pushed through the veil. But we haven't been that effective in what could be done because it was only spirit. It's the whole triune being is where the power and the force and the authority is really going to be. That as you break through the veil, you'll be able to carry the authority and the presence of God like you've never known before. Well, we'll stop it here. As I said, this might be a work in progress. We might have to have a couple more times around the table and talk about this, because it's time to break the veil. And I bless everyone else out there in Christianity that are doing their thing. They're doing what they feel God has raised them up to do, and that's great. But someone has to break the veil. We've got to see the release of sonship in the earth, because that is the catalyst that will ignite everything that's hanging on the periphery right now. All right, well, Ann and I thank you for being on the call or listening in. We'll talk again soon.